a third noble truth of the Four Noble Truths. The first being that there is suffering. The second, that we know the causes of suffering. And the third being that there is a way to end the suffering. And I use the suffering in a broad sense, the dissatisfaction, the suffering, the unskillfulness. In the first, of the Noble Truths, what we're really looking at is some wisdom or knowledge that there is suffering. And we're kind of seeing that in relationship to pain, or we're seeing the suffering as separate from its causes, and beginning to look at it. And then the second noble truth, that's the truth of really looking at this and beginning to see those causes. It's an investigation that we undergo. And then in the third noble truth, that there is a way to deal with this, we are beginning to act. We're beginning to purify the mind. And this purification that we're beginning is to address the defilements. We know what the defilements are. They're craving, their resistance, their delusion, hate, anger, all that stuff, dukkha. And the way that we're beginning this process is, it's not as though those are going to go away forever. But what we're beginning to do is to realize that we can separate ourselves from their ability to cause. We're cutting them off. We're beginning to do that. That's what purification is. It's not as though we're never going to get angry again. It's that anger is not going to be what's ruling us, what's driving us. We can recognize it as, like, oh, I see you, Mara. I see, this anger here, and I see it in awareness. It's not something we're thinking about. It's something that we are working on in awareness and working in mindfulness. We talked about that before. Mindfulness is where we can go to work on our liberation. Yeah, our liberation from suffering. So I figured I'd talk a little bit more about how that's worked for me. And this is a little bit more about, my experience with the military and not the military. But when I had fairly recently left the military and was involved with a couple of groups of veterans, I heard about and met with some members of Agent Orange Victims International. I had no idea what that was. I hadn't really heard about Agent Orange at that point, but met with these guys because they said it was important, and they're all vets, and found out that Agent Orange was a defoliant that had been developed and marketed to the military which is known as dioxin or 2,4,5-T, or what the military called it, Agent Orange. It had been sprayed all over Southeast Asia, well, Vietnam, to defoliate it. The belief being that, well, if they eliminated the jungles, the enemy wouldn't have anywhere to hide. It was a very effective defoliant, and it also was a very huge health hazard, which no one was talking about. And Agent Orange Victims International was educating us on that. And that's where I found out that I had been exposed to it. And my reaction, this is well before I had been engaged with Buddhism in any way at all, really. My reaction was rage. I couldn't believe that that this is what my country had done to me, or was doing to me. Had exposed me to this stuff. And I had been doing some tactical research and was sort of familiar with what that process looked like. And I went to, there's a number of volumes you can find in the library called the Standard & Poor's Directory of Corporations. And I was looking up Dow Chemical to see what it looked like. And you open this book to Dow Chemical, and one of the things you see on the front page is a chart of what their profitability looks like. And here you have this fairly straight line, and then Vietnam War, and their profitability went through the roof, all the way through the Vietnam War, which just added to the fury. Not only had they marketed this stuff, to the military, but people had made, obscene profits on it. And they exposed me to this poison. My initial reaction at that time was I needed to find who these people were, who are major stockholders, and start taking some revenge. I was enraged. One of the people who had, introduced the information to me about Agent Orange was one of the officials of Agent Orange Victims International. And I was talking to him about it. In order to be an official in Agent Orange Victims International at the time, you had to be dying of something connected with Agent Orange. And this guy qualified there, Jimmy Sparrow. And I told him what I was thinking, and wanted to connect with other folks who might be feeling the same way. And he and I talked for quite a while, and he convinced me that that would be a really bad idea. They were trying to get some legislation introduced that, would do something to help the victims. And were I to start taking out my vengeance on the stockholders, that was probably going to be a huge problem. So he persuaded me not to do it, but it hadn't really changed my heart. And I carried around this anger, this burden, for a long time. And now let's move forward to about 25 years ago, when I was introduced to the Dharma and began practicing it. And here we are, moving along, getting better at this, getting to understand better. And about 2.5 years ago, I got a diagnosis of cancer. And the cancer that I have is directly related to my exposure to Agent Orange. So they immediately put me on disability. And that's been going on. But the big difference is I don't have to have that anger. I don't have it. I don't have any hate. What I have is a desire to act from love and compassion and to be there for, my brothers and sisters, all of you, uh, my brothers and sisters in the military and retired. Uh, and the way that that happened was in the process of activating the third noble truth. I've been able to sort of to make a separation between the roots of the suffering, that greed and anger, uh, and craving and resistance and delusion, so that it no longer influences my actions. And part of my actions are, I think, of my thoughts, uh, my attitude, my motivation. So it's not as though, that anger was never there. And it's not as though anger isn't there for other things that are going on. Right now, all the stuff that is going on in our country is generating some anger. I have to say that. It's been part of my personal experience that I've lost people I love. People have been killed who should be bright young people, like leading our country. Personally, I've lost people. And again, I don't feel that I have to lead from anger. I tell people that the Dalai Lama is my hero, and he absolutely is. Here's someone who lost absolutely everything. And when one of his associates was talking about how angry he was with China for what they had done, the Dalai Lama counseled him not to not to let that anger take root. Don't give it birth. Is what I think the phrase was, because it's going to harm you, and won't do anything to help. Uh, and that's why we're all counseled to live from love and compassion and generosity rather than anger, delusion,